New world order.
Welcome to Quick Hits. I'm your host, Shannon Smith, aka Podcast Smitty. It is Fan of Sport Tuesday. We will start the show with paying tribute to some of the losses that we experienced this past week. The loss of Malcolm-Jamal Warner, Chuck Mangione, Ozzy Osbourne, and one of the biggest and most impactful losses in all of sports, Hulk Hogan. I'll be dispensing my thoughts on his impact on me as a sports fan, his legacy in professional wrestling, his best match, and his biggest fumble here on this very episode. If you're new to the show, what's good? I'm Shannon. I'm a fan of sport. And every Tuesday, I drop an episode with unique discussion inside the field of sports. So with that being said, let's start the show. Can't fall off, now they holler he'll turn, thinking I'ma sell out, talking just to feel heard. I never listen, although they say it's strictly. Now let's get into this microwave popcorn segment, a little light snack, a little appetizer before we get into the show here. What I want to say to my boomers out there and my Gen Z people out there, check on your Gen X, your millennial friends, check on them. We are not okay. Last week was a tough week, losing some great people out there. Malcolm-Jamal Warner passing away, 54 years old. That was rough. Chuck Mangione, him passing away, 84 years old. Ozzy Osbourne, these guys passing away. It was rough for us. You know, more on the Hulkster later on. He's who the show is going to be around in the next segments. But I know that there are some of the others, Gen Z, some of the boomers out there are wondering, why in the world are you so hurt by these people that passed away? They don't know you personally. They don't know your name. You don't know them. Why are you so bent out of shape with them passing away? Well, I'll tell you why. So my man Sean Lucas, who does It Stinks, by the way, man, watch my man's show. He does great with these TV and movies, talking about what to watch. He does a great job with them. Heck of a job. But in one of his episodes, he identified me and him as latchkey kids, meaning mom and dad both worked. And when you got home, you had to find that key. That key was probably under the mat, or that key was in that hiding place. And you had to get that key, get into the door. And when you got home, you had some chores to do. You had to get on that homework before mom and dad got home. And if you got everything done, then yeah, you can get in front of the TV. You can play those video games. You can go outside and play. But one of those things that I enjoyed as a kid is that when we got finished, we got to watch our favorite shows. And so that's why we're so hurt by this, is because some of these shows we really grew up with. We got to see these characters grow up. They may have began as kids, and then later on, they started growing into men and women. And that weighs on you for a while. Like, for example, the Cosby Show, with Theodore Huxtable, there were many people that grew up and thought that Theo was like their brother, or Theo was like their friend. And they enjoyed that. So when that happens, you develop that kinship when you watch that show. I remember that. I didn't watch every season of the Cosby Show. Of course, I was smaller at that time. I was younger. But I did watch a good bit of the Cosby Show. My show with Malcolm-Jamal Warner was Malcolm and Eddie. That was my show. Love that show. Hilarious show. It was real fun. My sister and me used to watch that on old UPN. That was cool. And then I saw Tubi had it on there. And that was the day before he passed away. I was watching a couple episodes, got finished with the podcast, sent it to Michael Davis, got on Tubi, watched a little bit of Malcolm and Eddie. I was loving it. Then the next day I found out he passed away, and that was rough. That was rough. And then later on, some of these characters make a comeback. They might have been around for a little bit earlier before we were born. Like my niece, she wasn't around for all of Ozzy's career, but she became a fan of his, and she's 17, so she didn't get to see all of his career. And she was one of the first people that told me that he passed away. And then, of course, with John Mangione on King of the Hill, that was another thing. So that was rough seeing that. That has us going back to look at some of what they did, on the internet, on YouTube, things like that. You get to see some of their earlier music, some of their times as younger people. they were great artists. Of course, Ozzy, he had his longevity with being on the reality show on MTV, and that was big. Now, another reason why we grieve so hard is because the way that TV has changed over time. You grew up with a show at one point in time. Now that we have the streaming, services, we get a whole season, and then we get to watch that whole season. We can binge watch. But it's just something about waiting on that show every week. You watch that one episode, you got to wait a week. You get that anticipation period, and you're ready to go after you get that one show in. So you're ready to go for next week. I love the binge watch shows. I really do. But watching that show for this week and then going into next week and being ready for it next week is nothing like it. But all in all, my heart spills for these men, their families. They don't have their family member anymore, and for their many fans. So that's what's in the bag for Microwave Popcorn this week. Hope you enjoyed. Now let's get on to these all four quarters. Let's go. 4 topics, 4 discussions, all 4 quarters. Let's go. Let's start with quarter number 1. Why I became a wrestling fan. Now, when I did the episode talking about John Cena's heel turn back in about March, I talked about how I grew up a wrestling fan. And why did I grow up as a wrestling fan, you ask? Because of Hulk Hogan. Hulk Hogan, as an 80s baby, 90s kid, Hulk Hogan was larger than life. You remember those memes? You've seen those memes on social media where it has on there, and it says, why do you work out so much? And it has pictures of Arnold, Sly Stallone, Mr. T. You could definitely put Hulk Hogan in that category. Hulk Hogan was one of those figures of masculinity, the muscled up, big, strong man, the one that the boys always wanted to be. The boys looked and saw, hey, there's Hulk Hogan. He was such an inspiration to so many kids, so many adults out there. The iron will, the super strength, the against all odds, still coming out on top, overcoming adversity. Hulk Hogan did that. That's what wrestling is about, still is about, is that overcoming the adversity, fighting against the grain. That's what Hulk Hogan did. He was a figure for so many people in that 80s and that 90s. When I was a kid, my very first wrestling action figure was a Hulk Hogan action figure. My grandma used to give me coloring books with wrestlers on there. Hulk Hogan was on a lot of those coloring books that she had. My favorite game growing up for the NES was WWF WrestleMania. Who was on the cover? Hulk Hogan. The ripping of the shirt, hulking up. Great stuff there. Pointing. You go with the knuckles, the big boot, the big leg. 1, 2, 3. There were great wrestlers in the 80s. There were great wrestlers at that time, but Hulk Hogan is what brought wrestling mainstream. He was the powerhouse behind that mainstream push for wrestling to get into pop culture. One of the most requested athletes for the Make-A-Wish Foundation, rock and wrestling, MTV. That's what Hulk Hogan did. He was the figurehead of wrestling. They built the company off of Hulk Hogan. Vince McMahon had that vision to build the company off Hulk Hogan. He did it. Young Smith believed Hulk Hogan was wrestling. Quarter number 2. My favorite match. So, of course, the greatest Hulk Hogan match has to be Hulk Hogan versus Andre the Giant, WrestleMania 3. This guy right here wasn't even a year old yet, so I didn't get to see the match live. If I did, that would have been really, really cool. But the match, my favorite Hogan match of all time has to be WrestleMania 18 with him and The Rock. The reason why I love this was because The Rock and Hogan was the heel, The Rock was the face. Throughout the match, you saw the double turn. You saw that turn. You saw Hogan slowly become the face as the crowd was split in between cheering for Hogan and cheering for The Rock. You saw The Rock start doing the heel things. He tried to attempt a chair shot. He took the weightlifting belt and slapped Hogan with it. There was times where Hogan was doing the heel stuff and then turned into the face. There were times where he started, you saw it coming out. The crowd was wanting to cheer Hogan. You could tell it when you watched that match. You could tell that the crowd was looking to cheer for Hogan. Couldn't do it because Hogan was the heel, so they started doing the turn right in front of us. It looked like we were going to see Hulkamania again. Supreme story being told by The Rock, by Hollywood Hogan at that time, who hulked up. The crowd loved it. You know, you saw him pull the rock bottom. You saw Hogan pull the rock bottom. You saw that. You saw The Rock pull the sharpshooter, which is a controversial move still to this day, with the Montreal Screwjob, with him using it a year later to win a Survivor Series to get his first world title. You saw that. And then Hogan becoming what the crowd loved, being the fan favorite again. Back in the old days when he was with the WWF back in the 80s. Supreme masterclass of storytelling in that match. You saw The Rock bring in Hogan again, the NWO getting involved and Hogan being kicked out of the NWO. That was big. You know, he was a part of the original NWO. He gets kicked out. So that was cool. The Rock brought Hogan in. Hogan got the flex for the crowd once again. Hogan got that pop back again, and that shows you why I will always say it, and I'll continue to say it. Professional wrestling is the ultimate gentleman sports. Let's go to quarter number 3.
New World Order.
My question to you guys is this. Now, I want to shout out my man Jason Colenso after his great episode of 3 from Deep yesterday. He prompted me with some thoughts. He pointed out how Michael Jordan helped bring the NBA to the forefront after Bird and Magic. And he talked about how Hulk Hogan brought wrestling to the forefront, brought it to the mainstream, brought it to people who probably would not be wrestling fans if it weren't for somebody like Hulk Hogan. He talked about how iconic Hulk Hogan was, put him in the likes of how Michael Jordan was to the NBA. So that to me prompts this question right here to you guys here in this fourth quarter. Is Hulk Hogan one of the greatest sports icons of all time? Do you put him in there with a Wayne Gretzky? Do you put him in there with a Michael Jordan? Do you put him in there with one of those guys? With how great he was to the sport of wrestling. Let me know your thoughts in those comments. Let me know. Let's get into that. Let's get into those discussions, get into those comments, and let me hear what you have to say. And now let's go on to the next segment.
The following announcement has been paid for by the New World Order.
The heel turn of all heel turns. July 7th, 1996, Bash at the Beach. Kevin Nash, Scott Hall, and their third mystery partner that no one knew, going to be taking on the saviors of WCW, Sting, Macho Man Randy Savage, Lex Luger. The Outsiders had it planned all along. They took WCW, they had it under ransom. They were telling everyone, we're going to have that third man. We're going to take WCW. It's going to be ours. No one believed them. No one saw it coming. Then on that fateful night, all of a sudden, your hero showed up. The Hulkster, he showed up. Everyone thought that their savior had arrived. Everyone thought that Hulk Hogan was going to help WCW, thought that he was going to take it back, thought that he was going to aid those three over there trying to defend the honor of WCW. It didn't happen. You all fell for it, hook, line, and sinker. And just like that, wrestling changed. It all changed. We ushered in a new world order of wrestling, brother. Hulk Hogan. The heel turn that everyone saw, it was insane. They were reporting it on the news. People who didn't watch wrestling wondered what happened. It was insane. They didn't know what to expect. They didn't know. But Hulk Hogan single-handedly solidified his greatness by accomplishing the greatest heel turn, being a face for years, being the man that told the kids to take their vitamins and say their prayers. He turned his back on those very people that loved him so, and he decided to do it for himself. And Hulk Hogan became considered immortal, even more immortal than what he was in the WWF. He solidified himself as a great, one of the titans of the sport, by becoming the leader, one of the founding fathers of the NWO. And we all know the NWO is for life. We've been having a lot of fun here on the show, but now it's time for us to take a commercial break. Don't you touch that dial. While you're at it, go ahead and subscribe to the Boom Broadcasting YouTube channel and go through the plethora of podcasts that we have in the field of TV and movies, sports, and sports entertainment. We have live podcasts. We have solo podcasts. We have reels. Everything you can think of. We've got it. And if we don't, we're going to go and get it. The sports season hasn't even fully began yet, but we're up and running. Make sure that you hit that notification bell. Make sure you're part of the live conversation on our podcast. Make sure that you keep on going. We thank you for your support. Keep on watching, and we'll be coming with more. Now back to our show. Welcome back. Thank you for joining me still. I appreciate your company. I appreciate your time. Now we're going to go ahead and get into this biggest fumble. We've been talking about Hulk Hogan, all the great things that he's done for the sport of professional wrestling, what he's done for pop culture, what he's done to fans like you and me, what we'll remember him for. As we look at it, of course, when we go with the good, we got to get the bad. So, of course, I'm saving that for my biggest fumble. You see, Hulk Hogan in 2016, the biggest fumble that I'll be talking about was in 2016 when he was doing an interview and he was using racial slurs towards the man that his daughter was dating. And when I heard those words, I went back and I looked at the interview and I was thinking, hey, maybe those guys might have baited Hulk Hogan into saying something like that. But the more I look at it, I don't think it was more bait than anything. I don't know if it was or not. I don't know. But yet and still, it shouldn't have been done. It was very, very horrible, very sad. And I hate that so much. And it didn't have to be done. Hearing those things then, I was maybe a little more lenient then, but hearing it now as I've gotten older, it doesn't fly. And my thoughts on Hulk Hogan have been very, very different. You see, when Hulk Hogan done that, I understand that people are human beings. I understand that people make mistakes. I get it. But when you repeatedly do something, it's not a mistake, it's a choice. And he did that. Hulk chose to talk that way. And he continued to talk that way. And he was angry. I could hear the anger in his voice. And it was something that really, really made me feel betrayed. We see that in life, people that are upright, upstanding. And listen, I understand it. Hulk Hogan got caught in a steroid scandal. He was in one of those PRON, prawn, one of those tapes there as well too. And it was terrible. He was, he committed infidelity. He was not the greatest person, but I will say this, Hulk Hogan did end up getting saved. He ended up accepting Christ. And it was like 2 years before he passed away. That's great. But I look at that and I see what happened in 2016 and I felt betrayed because I was a big fan of Hulk Hogan as a young person, was a fan of him in his NWO years when, you started seeing the real out of it when you started growing up and you started seeing how some of these guys lived. I can understand why you would feel differently about someone, but that to me was a betrayal as an African-American fan, as a black fan of Hulk Hogan, as a black fan of wrestling. That really hurt. And that was something that I remember and I will always remember. I'm just thankful that it happened to me when I was a man and not as a child. I probably would have gotten out of wrestling and I probably would have never watched wrestling again if I was smaller. But he talked about he didn't know he was being videotaped. You're Hulk Hogan, man. People are going to videotape you. People are going to take pictures. People are going to do this. They're going to want to talk and autographs and all that other stuff. They're going to want that because you're one of the biggest icons in all of wrestling. Wrestling is synonymous with you. People know you. Of course, people are going to make sure that they get their name out there and try to make a name off you as well, too. So to me, the way I see it and the way that I look at it, that really made me view Hulk Hogan differently. So when Hulk Hogan passed away, I wanted to make sure that I made it clear that I appreciate everything that Hulk Hogan has done for wrestling. I appreciate what he has done for sport. I appreciate how he made me feel as a fan. But I don't appreciate him using words like that, degrading a fan of yours, because that made me feel like I was nothing to him. And of course, I know he has millions and millions and millions of fans out there. Of course, I'm just a number. I get it. But still, is that how you feel about all your fans that are of color? Really? Do you feel that way? Do you? It makes you wonder. And I view Hulk Hogan, I don't really view him as a person. I just view him as a character. I like the character Hulk Hogan. I like what he was as a wrestler. I like how he made me feel as a wrestler. But as a man, not so much. I know Hulk Hogan has passed away and he's gone. I get it. He got it right with God. I hope he did. But as far as anything else, the way I look at Hulk Hogan, I look at him kind of like I do Spider-Man or like I do Batman. He's a character. And that's all he is to me. That's the way it is. That's the way it's going to be with me from now on, as I view it as a wrestling fan. Hulk Hogan is a character. Thank you for what you've done for wrestling. I don't condone what you've done in that interview, and I don't condone it. I don't like it. But I thank you for what you've done. Hopefully you got it right. Rest in peace. Everyone, thank you so much once again for joining in on the discussion and the conversation, giving me some of your time. Thank you so much. If you like this, make sure that you watch last week's episode. Watch the episodes from my constituents, my counterparts, my homies here on Boom Broadcasting. Thank you for your time. I'm Shannon Smith, and this is Quick Hits.